Hey, we are here with Enrique Rubio, and I am so excited. And I'm going to just jump right into it. Why is HR the loneliest position in a company?
Because it is. If you don't see a function as a revenue generating function or as a cost saving function, if you see any function, this is not just true for HR, but any function, you see it as a cost center, then you're gonna have want to spend the least amount of money in resourcing, right, that function to make it function properly. And for the longest time, organizations have seen HR as a necessary evil that they need to have around, as a cost center that they use to, reduce risk in the organization, comply with federal, state, local legislation, and making sure that things are, kind of like working okay, and that people are getting paid for their work or fired if they are not doing the right thing. The traditional view that business leaders have had of HR is reduced only to that. And if you reduce HR only to that, you want to make sure that if they are doing only that, you give them the least amount of resources to be able to perform that. So that's why it's the loneliest function. Not because it can do all that it needs to do or all that it should do with those resources. Is that a lot of business leaders have seen it only through the lenses of this is a cost center, therefore let's minimize how much it costs us to run that cost center. Progressive organizations that believe in the power of people, in the power of culture, in the power of HR or the people function, not just HR, given the bad rap that HR as a concept may have, but the people function. The leaders who believe in that have invested in HR, and they have resourced the function properly to do technology, analytics, these days AI, to build great programs, to be able to build an organization where the leaders and the managers are equipped with the right tools to do the right kind of work, and that HR is the agent of that level of transformation. There are not a lot of organizations like that yet, but there are many of them that have become some sort of a beacon of hope. So that's why HR is lonely. As long as you see it as a cost center, you won't want to invest anything on it because you don't think there's value in doing so, even though there is.
So this is much bigger than an organizational culture issue. This is an entire culture of systematic behavior of viewing your P&L statement and where your OPEX is that is not directly tied to revenue. So if you're in HR and you are feeling lonely, you're not alone. What are a few things that HR individuals can do to feel a sense of community and kind of get outside that construct?
So I'm going to imagine that most people in HR feel very lonely, even when they have teams around them. Because the thing with HR is that it's lonely not just because of the size of HR, it is lonely because of the design of HR, right? The most traditional design, which is very siloed, even if you're in HR, you have a very specific, specialist kind of role within HR, and there's only one of you. There are no two compensation specialists in your organization, it's just you. There are no two people analytics people, it's just you, right? So even if you wanted to have a sounding board that allows you to talk about things that matter to you and your role, it's generally unlikely that you are going to have that within HR unless some of the other folks are more, not only vertical in their functions, but transversal in their knowledge. What you can do, whether you are a one-person HR team or whether you are still a small team, but doing a function that nobody else does in your organization, you have to join communities. You have to be part of the many communities that are there. I'm the founder of one and the head of global community for another. Hacking HR, Transform, but we're not the only ones. There are many communities out there that are doing very good work to elevate HR. And some of them are focused on very specific niche areas within HR, right? So there may be an HR community that is mostly focused on learning. There may be an HR community that is mostly focused on compensation and benefits people or people analytics. So you will find your tribe out there. You just got to go out there and look for it. There's one irony here, Ryan. Even though HR is lonely, and even though HR people recognize that their function is lonely, it's more rare to find HR people going out there to find a tribe, to find a community, and actively engaged in that community. It's ironic because if you're lonely,
Interesting.
the solution to that is to go out there and find your people. But you
Sure.
don't do that. That's why very often, by the way, you have these HR leaders who are phenomenal and they go into becoming fractional leaders or consultants and they struggle to lift their business up because they never invested in those kinds of skills while they were employed. That to me is an irony because, again, if I am lonely in my function and I want to learn and I want to build community, I have to do it on my own. Nobody's going to knock on my door. Well, some people do, but in general, the opportunities for somebody to knock on your door to say, "Oh, be part of this," are going to be less common than you being the one out there looking for those opportunities. So my message here is what you can't find in your organization, and most likely if you're in HR, you won't find that sense of community, of belonging and learning of your function. You will have to find it out there. Again, I am part of two great communities. We're not the only ones. There are many out there that are pretty cool.
Oh, I love it. Enrique, can you give us a full, proper introduction to yourself? I love your background. I love what you've done. I love Hacking HR, what you guys stand for, but we'd love to hear from you a little bit about your background and maybe even tell us a little bit of the why of this entrepreneurial spirit is inside of you as well.
I'm a Venezuelan by origin. That's where I was born, and I moved to the US 15 years ago. By academic trade or training, I am an electronic engineer, and I worked many, many years in telecommunications. So when you guys see those towers and those antennas, put up on those towers, that's what I used to do. I built systems and then I installed those systems.
We can't see them anymore. They've turned into pine trees and cactuses.
In Arizona, by the way, in some other states, you see them very ugly out there.
Yes.
But I like when they make them into like pine trees, that they are more camouflaged, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
But that's what I used to do before. And then I transitioned into HR for, I don't know, an accident of the universe where two or three things happened in my life. One of them was I was a little tired of working in pure technology. Then I ended up doing a little stint in technology sales. I didn't like selling, but I like the interactions with people. And I was trying to find the best opportunity to interact with people without being in sales. And a couple of other things that happened in my personal life. So all of those together made me pursue a career in HR consulting. Then I became a corporate HR person. And then ultimately, when I was a corporate HR person, my brain was like, wow, like HR, such a cool function. And it is just so slow. Everything takes forever. I have this analogy, by the way, that I want to share with you. I saw that we were using these tools, and when I say tools, I don't mean physical tools, I mean systems and methodologies and things like that were so obsolete. And all I kept thinking was, if I was using technology as obsolete as HR is using in their operation, I would be working with a typewriter right now instead of a computer. I always saw it that way because I'm like, that's kind of like the analogy, right? And we don't work with typewriters anymore unless you are a vintage kind of person. Most likely you are working in a computer. But in HR, we still have systems that were created at the same time that the computer was created, 40, 50, 60 years ago, which is pretty crazy. So I said to myself, I need to do something about this, and I know that I like engaging with people and being around, by the way. So I created Hacking HR. I said, I'm going to create a forum for people to come to talk about technology and to come to talk about HR and do a little bit of cross-pollination of ideas in here. It was a hobby that I had back in 2017 when I created Hacking HR. And little did I know that it was going to last all this time, that it was going to become this good community and one of many, but one that has been around for a long time, and trying to elevate the role and the impact of HR.
How would you define it? Because I know that the audience is large. It continually grows. It's got some catalyst behind it with this organic movement, because I think people just really resonate with what you guys are doing over there. Just for those that haven't heard of it, how do we contextualize how big it is?
We measure numbers in different ways. We always like to say, among our followers, email newsletter subscribers, members, We have about 2 million people around the world. We have about 100,000 members in our community. So those are people that are engaging in content and activities and programs and events. And then, all these, thousands upon thousands of people that are, on our LinkedIn network, on our Instagram, on our email newsletter. That's about the size of the community.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Kudos to you. That's fantastic.
Thanks.
And the thing that I love about that is you built a community around a common pain point, because obviously you found something that resonates with a lot of other individuals. And I think as business leaders, even as people operations, whatever, we tend to get so stuck in our construct of our own mind of like task oriented. You came up with a purpose. You came up with a vision that aligned with kind of a targeted pain point. Yeah. And you've touched on that a little bit, but what are some of those other pain points that Hacking HR kind of addresses and you found as a really sticky hot button for people?
There are a lot of tool or operationally oriented things for HR. Let me talk about one of them, the operational models or frameworks for HR, Ulrich and McKinsey and Gartner and Bersin. That's all good. I'm not complaining about that. But there's no vision for HR. And there's a difference between operationalizing the way we do our business and a vision of what we could do, but we are not yet. I see HR as the next generation business leader or business leading function. I see HR as the function that has the potential, not realized yet, but has the potential to lead people and businesses forward into this new, chaotic, insane reality of work. And the reason why I believe this is possible for us is because we sit at a unique intersection, which is business operation with people operation. Not everybody sits in there. Some other functions are kind of in there. Like IT is one of those that is like closest to what we do, even though they are more technology, but they are about sitting in some similar intersection than we are. And by the way, that is so true that I think our competitors for the CEO role in the future will be the IT people, not people that are coming from marketing or sales like it's traditionally been, right? The people from marketing, sales, or finance. I think it's going to be more IT kind of people. But I see HR as having the potential to be the next generation leaders that are moving organizations forward into the future. One of the biggest pain points that I have is, to me, translating that vision into something that has meaning today and in the future. What most of these models for HR do is that they only respond to today's needs. When you look at those models, they are telling HR how to do their work today, but they are doing very little to tell HR how they get ready for what's going to happen next. I am sitting right now with one foot on how do I help HR solve today's problems, but never forgetting that today's problems will last for a short period of time. Tomorrow's problems are yet to come, and we have to respond for them too. So we have to equip ourselves with those two things. To me, that vision that I'm trying to convey here is that I believe so much in the potential of HR that I have spent a significant amount of time talking to HR people about things that haven't happened yet. So when you look back in time, when I created this community back in 2018, I was giving all these presentations about artificial intelligence in HR. And some people in HR were like, that's never going to happen to us. Forget about it. Fast forward 4 years in the future, generative AI, massive transformations in the workplace. Only if we had gotten ready back in 2018 for this moment that we knew was going to come. And that's one of the many moments that we know are coming, and we have to get ready for them. And if we do get ready for them while solving for today's realities, we will become that business leader leading people into the future. That's what I believe in. And translating that into operational models that respond for today and tomorrow is still quite a challenge, which is why still most people look into short-term solutions to the problems that they have, forgetting that, in a few months from now, we're going to look back at those problems that we have right now, and we're going to say, holy smokes, I was going to say another word, by the way. Like those are too simple. Now they can be resolved with AI. Let me give you one example of this. One of the biggest challenges for HR forever has been personalization. The tools that we had available only allowed us to do this type of thinking, which is one size fits all. That's what we used to do. One solution has to fit everybody. So the round peg, the square peg has to go through, whatever shape we can design given the constraints of technology. So personalization of services, learning, performance, coaching, feedback, mentoring, whatever you want has always been a big deal and a very difficult deal for HR. In a year from now, we're going to look back and this is going to happen in seconds with AI. So you look at an operational model that tells you how to personalize services today. And when you look at that model in 6 months from now or in 12 months from now, you will say that's completely obsolete. But at this moment, 6 months before that happens, we have to be thinking, how do we get ready when we have the tools that will allow us to do that in 6 months from now? If that makes sense. That is kind of like the vision that I'm trying to build for HR.
Let's talk about AI and HR and how that impacts not only the P&L statement, the expense load of a business. In fact, just today, I read an article on CNBC that Chipotle has announced that their HR has cut its costs by 75% by implementing AI into their recruiting and hiring process. So I know at Ava HR, one of our big things is introducing AI to help streamline and automate a lot of the analysis of resumes, helping with communication, scheduling, identifying and communicating with candidates in a much clearer and professional way. But how do you see HR leaders adapting and getting ready for AI? What are some tactical things besides just cost cutting, but actual true enhancement of HR function? How do they embrace that and get ready for it?
Most people in the knowledge workforce are using AI in one way, shape, or form, whether it is at an individual capacity or in a work capacity or for work from an individual capacity, which is kind of strange, right? So most people in the knowledge workforce are using AI. Most organizations are still not embedding AI corporate tools in their ecosystems. So that means that there's a massive gap here between people using AI for something and organizations leveraging AI to improve the whole operation and not just a tiny thing. So I say that because I think there's a great opportunity, talking about leadership going forward, talking about future business leadership, there's a great opportunity for HR right now to step in and say, we have to put these tools in the hands of our people while building the governance frameworks, while making sure that they are skilled, not just to use ChatGPT or whatever tool they use, but to think or to embrace a mindset that allows them to redesign processes with AI in mind, which means completely redesigning everything that we do. So that is one area in which HR can step in. But in a more transactional, tactical level, if you are a single person working in HR, I recently read a research that was saying, I can't remember, so I can't quote it, but I do remember that the people that were asked about their own personal productivity improvements using AI, they said that they can now do a task that would normally take them an hour and a half. They could do that task in only half an hour. So we're talking about a massive amount of time saved that I don't know what they're using it for, but it's time saved. And time saved is cost saved as well. So at a very tactical level, if you work in HR and say you have to do a bunch of things, and one of them is recruitment and writing job descriptions. The other one is coaching hiring managers for interview panels. The other one is running onboarding campaigns. The other one is writing personalized communications for moments that matter in the employee life cycle. And all of those things were taking, as transactional as they were probably taking a large amount of your time. Individually, you can literally go right now to ChatGPT, create your own custom GPT for $20 a month. And for those $20 a month, you can automate every single communication that you ever create for your function, ever. You have to spend some time in the front end to customize the thing, to create it in your own branding and tone and style and blah, blah, blah. But once you have spent 5 hours doing that, then all of those hours in the back end are hours that you will be multiplying in effect by not having to write those descriptions on your own or those communications on your own. So there's a very organizational sort of level that you should be playing as an HR leader or professional, hopefully leading your organization through these times. And there's another that is a lot more tactical, which is how you use AI to increase your own personal productivity at work. Those are two things, two extremes, and there's a bunch of stuff happening in the middle, obviously. But those are two extremes, the very tactical and the very strategic at an organizational level.
I'm going to flip the script just a little bit, Enrique. But how do we take the human side of HR in a day of AI and technology and this movement towards automation? And how do we continue to always implement the human side of that into the business to protect our own careers in this industry and not just become a cost-cutting function that rolls up into some next-gen AI platform?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the decision to cut cost by laying people off generally doesn't come from HR. It comes from the board. It comes from the C-suite level, of which sometimes, but not always, HR is part of. Unfortunately, we are the ones left with giving the bad news to people and telling them, your position has been eliminated, your position is redundant, you're going to have to switch to another role, whatever it is. We are the ones who have to convey a message from a decision that very often we don't make. So I want to say that to tell HR people that I understand the pain of having to do some of these things when you don't want to do them, when you don't even agree with doing those things, but it's your job to do it. Simultaneously, I want to tell people, being, empathetic, losing a job is a horrendous thing to go through, especially in an economy that is so chaotic and volatile. The person that is communicating that information to you is not necessarily the person who made that decision. It is like, going to a restaurant and being mad at the waitress or the waiter because something happened outside of, in your own life, right? I mean, you're taking it out on somebody that most likely doesn't have anything to do with that. So I want to begin there to kind of like normalize a little bit of this situation, which will continue to happen. People will lose their jobs because of the impact of AI. I don't like to sugarcoat things. I like to be very frank here because, we have this conversation of like, well, like AI will create all these jobs and will give you time back. Some people, and a lot of them, will actually lose their jobs. And I'm hoping that they take this message as an urgency to reskill themselves so that it's not them, the ones losing that job. In very practical terms, other than that, which is a business decision that I think is very hard to go deeper into if we don't understand a business, as a whole. But I'm hoping that business leaders, think of the people and not just of the efficiencies, that they're gaining by embedding AI. But in the more practical way of doing things for HR and using AI, I think this opens up a number of great opportunities for HR to automate what's most transactional about their work so that they can spend the rest of the time doing what's most human about the work. The coaching and consulting role that we have, the mentoring role that we have, the performance conversations and feedback loops that we have to provide to people at work that very often require human conversations, creating the right culture, talking with people and understanding more about their lives and more about what they need. You can do that now if you leverage AI to run your transactions for you. Like I said before, there's a study that found that a task that used to take an hour and a half now takes half an hour. So you're getting an hour back. You now have to make a decision what you do with that hour. You can sit and look at Facebook, or you can go to talk to the people that you always wanted to talk to, but that you didn't have the time to talk to. You can respond to that email that has been sitting in your inbox, asking you for some advice about something, and that you haven't had the time to respond because you are so heads into the operation that you don't have the time for that. That to me is a big promise of AI.
It's fascinating. I love talking about AI. Obviously, being part of a company that's investing so much into integrating it into our own technology stack. But let's go back to the human side of this, because I think a lot of HR folks are feeling a little bit burned out. It's a little scary of the future. There's been a culture of being reactive instead of proactive because there's always so many fires that they consistently have to put out.
Yeah.
Could you label out maybe 2 or 3 steps if you're an HR practitioner out there feeling a little bit lonely? What are like 2 or 3 things you could do to help get out there and make help, get other mentorship, create a peer group to help reduce your own sense of burnout and frustration?
The irony here is that frustration comes from fear about what's going to happen in the future. And to respond to that, you have to learn about what's going to happen in the future. But by learning about what's going to happen in the future, you may get more fear about what's going to happen in the future, right? So there's a little bit of a circular thing going on here with a lot of irony in between. The way I think about this is it's not just your job right now, it's your employability. And we got to talk about the two of them. There's a difference between your current job and your future employability. So you do have to invest in being relevant for your current job. But I think you have to invest a lot more in remaining employable if that's your route. If you want to create a company, that's a different thing and you have to invest in other kinds of skills. But if you want to remain employable in something meaningful, you have to know what that something meaningful is, where you are today and what your gap is, and start closing that gap. Let me give you one example that is, once again, AI oriented, but it's still very relevant to this conversation. Two companies that I want to mention. One of them is Shopify, and they got a lot of backlash for this, by the way, but I'll talk a little bit about that. And Zapier is the other one. Shopify, I think it was about a month ago, the CEO posted something saying it was a manifesto of AI that supposedly came out, by the back door. I think they did it on purpose, because it was a great marketing campaign. Whatever the reality is, this manifesto came to, public light. And the manifesto was, we're becoming an AI first organization. And there are 4 principles that this manifesto was expressing. One of which was, we are expecting people that we hire in this company to already know about AI. So when you go to work in a workplace right now, I don't think anyone anymore gets training on how to turn on a computer. I don't think anyone gets any training anymore on how to use Word or Excel or these kinds of things, because it is assumed that you have the foundational knowledge to be able to do this on your own. We take that for granted today, but when you look back 25, 30 years ago, these tools didn't exist. So the first people to learn how to use a computer were taught how to turn on the computer. Remember, with the button and the big CPU and the fan in the back. So you have to be taught how to do that. The same way you have to be taught how to do AI right now, but eventually it's going to be so mainstream that it's going to be foundational knowledge. So if you don't know about AI, you have to close that gap. Because if you wanted to work for Shopify, and they got a lot of backlash for this, but unfortunately, the truth is they got a lot of backlash for that because they were one of the first ones doing this. And then there was a second, and then there was a third. We're breaking the inertia, and now we're going into the momentum that says most companies will be turning into that. And it's whenever we hear now, we are turning into an AI first company, we're going to be like, oh, whatever, you're all news now. But it's not all news yet because it's a new thing. But when that becomes all news, and that's going to happen in the next 12 to 18 months, by the way, which is a pretty quick, turnaround, by then it is going to be expected for you that your baseline is that you know how to use AI. So if you don't know how to use AI right now, you have to learn how to use AI because otherwise nobody's going to employ you going down the road, right? The other example is Zapier, which I think it was like 3 or 4 days ago. They came out with this matrix that has 4 dimensions. The dimensions are uncapable, capable, adaptive, and transformative. Those are the 4 dimensions of levels of proficiency in the use of AI. So in the uncapable level, these are people that don't know how to use ChatGPT. They wouldn't be able to have an interaction with an AI tool. So maybe that company, Zapier, still today would give the opportunity to a new hire to come in without knowing about AI. That's going to change very quickly. Now that the CEO said, this is the vision, in the next 3-6 months, if you can't prove that you know about AI, you won't be hired. One more data point that I want to share, and forgive me again, I'm coming up with all of them right now. I don't remember the sources. I just know that I read them because I deliver various programs on AI. There's one data point that says that most companies today would hire somebody junior who knows how to use AI versus somebody senior for the same role. That would have never happened, before, but particularly this year, but before the advent of generative AI. So I'm using AI as an example, but it's not the only one to say that if you are sitting right now listening to this and you're thinking, holy smokes, I don't know anything about AI, and if in the next 6 months, the baseline is going to be that I have to know about AI, then I'm going to have to learn how to use AI to be employable.
I just pulled up the Shopify manifesto here, and there's a few bullet points in here that really stand out to me. Number one is Shopify is now factoring AI usage into performance reviews
Yeah.
and peer evaluations. So they're measuring how much AI you're using in your role. And if you're not utilizing AI as part of your role, that's going to hurt you now in your performance review.
Yeah.
I think that's fascinating that now we're measuring, are you truly utilizing and maximizing your time with this tool of AI?
Yeah, and there's another one in those 4 bullet points as part of the manifesto, one of which is now AI has to be embedded in the whole innovation cycle of any product or service that we're developing. So meaning if you want to prototype, if you want to test, if you want to scale any solution for anything, AI has to be embedded across that process. He's not telling people how they will do that. They're going to have to figure it out, but they have to embed AI as part of that process redesign. That's not easy to do, by the way. Doing that is not using ChatGPT to ask them what's the capital of France. This is like real process redesign with AI in mind. That is real AI first. And that will require some skills that most people still don't have. Say that you are a process engineer or you're a change management expert, something of that, of that nature, and you don't know how to use AI. You are screwed. You got to learn how to use AI because that's the new normal. And for Shopify, for Zapier, the other company that did it was Duolingo that recently said this and it got all this backlash. Yes, these are the first 3 companies that we're hearing saying that. But tomorrow is going to be 4 more. And the week after it's going to be 100. And in a month from now, it's going to be 1,000. This is inevitable anymore. So you just got to ride that wave.
If I could rattle off a little bit of expertise that I have in the AI world, if I were an HR practitioner, I got a little bit of savviness with some technology. There's some tools like N8N, which allow you to build your own prompt in AI where you can actually take a repository of all of the resumes that you're getting in your organization and put them into a shared drive.
Yeah.
You can then create this automation sequence and prompt it to say, I want you to crawl through all of these resumes, and then you can chat with the model and say, I want you to highlight the 3 best resumes that align with these skill sets that this manager in this department requested me to hire a candidate for. And we're going to go through our repository of existing A-player candidates that have the highest quality of synchronous skill sets to be able to help you cut down your staffing and recruiting time.
Yeah.
That's just one little example of how you can utilize AI on your own, is by going and finding these different tools. ChatGPT is unbelievable, and it was such a first mover advantage, and that's just become the household naming convention when we talk about AI. But there's so many other platforms that we need to introduce ourselves to, because Claude is one thing for someone. You're going to start having, all these other expressive and generative AI platforms to do different functions, but finding ways to say, where am I spending my time? And where can I automate some of those systems and processes? And if I can't 3x, to your point, 30 minutes saves, of workload used to be an hour and a half. If I'm not 3xing my workload and my output, my job could potentially be on the line for someone else that can do that.
Yeah.
So it's not just about, am I going to be a little bit resistant to it? It's more like we have got to be fully open arms about this, because if we're not, someone else is.
Not only that, I mean, even for your own sake, it's not just for the sake of your workplace anymore. For your own sake, you can build your own systems right now. Like I started exploring, Mind Studio, to build an agent. Because the truth is that in the next few months, we're going to see people working alongside AI agents. Like if it was another person, but it's an AI agent, we're going to see people reporting to AI agents. We're going to see AI agents reporting to people. The mixed possibilities here are phenomenal, but you got to know how to do this, right? The best thing that you can do right now, if you don't know how to do any of this, is you go to ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity or Microsoft Copilot or any text-based kind of like, generative AI, large language model, and you literally, this is all we do, all you do, you go to ChatGPT and you say, my name is Enrique, I'm a recruiter. I've been doing this for 20 years. I know zero about AI. Please tell me what to do because I want to remain relevant. That's all. Enter. Boom. Here's the list. First of all, Where do you think your industry is going? Here. Second, let me design a plan for you. We can do it right now, by the way, like in seconds. That's why I laugh when people say, like, oh, we got to learn about prompt engineering. No, forget about them prompt engineering. Just think that you're having a conversation with like somebody, but that somebody is a computer. It's an AI system. The same question that you would ask a coach, which is, hey, I want to remain employable and relevant. This is what I do. These are the gaps that I think I have. Guide me. The same thing, go and ask ChatGPT and be amazed by what the response is going to be. That's what I'm doing with the Mind Studio thing. I'm not a developer. I used to do this 25 years ago. I'm not a developer. So I asked ChatGPT recently, could I, not being a developer, create my own AI agent either by coding it myself or by developing on a drag and drop tool like Mind Studio? ChatGPT said, yes, this is what you got to do. And obviously, I have now the critical thinking to know what kind of questions to ask, right? Can you guide me? What's the step? How much time it's going to take me? What are the potential roadblocks that I'm going to be facing when I, exhaust my knowledge and my capabilities and I have to ask somebody else for help? All of that I am doing with ChatGPT, all of it. So it's amazing, truly amazing.
So how do we protect the integrity of workplace? And let me explain this by just a little bit here, Enrique. What we saw during COVID was people were hiring career Zoom actors to do their virtual interviews for them because they would get nervous on these, and they knew that these recruiters didn't know them from somebody else, and they could hire someone, dress them up a little bit, and before you know it, these professional actors were doing their Zoom interviews for them, and they'd show up day one, and they were like, I don't remember seeing that exact face on my interview, but they made the hire and they onboarded, and people were getting caught hiring these career actors. And we saw this happen in the Philippines significantly when they were trying to do virtual interviews from here to there. We're like, wow, they all kind of look the same. And they were, it was a massive problem. People were expressing this frustration. And now what we're seeing is reports coming out of AI agents doing the video interviews or the first line of screening for the companies that have video interviews or those self-recorded video questions that they have to do. So my question comes back to you, Enrique, is how do we protect our organization from the perfect resume? Because if you're not using an AI to help you write your resume, then you're, get
out of here. Yeah, good luck. Yeah.
So every resume is going to be perfect. Their responses to questionnaires are going to be perfect. We're going to start getting people using their own persona agent doing the recording. But how do we come back to getting to the true root of high quality hiring and recruiting?
Yeah.
What do you think? How does a company protect itself to make sure we're not hiring the AI? We're not a version of Ryan. We're hiring Ryan's, the brain of Ryan.
I'm going to begin by saying this. All that you just said is inevitable. The fact that there will be an AI agent, which will be either an AI agent that you design or your digital twin, that person will go to do your interview is inevitable. But simultaneously, it is inevitable that on the side of the recruiter, there will be an AI agent having a conversation with you. And it's going to have a conversation with you, but simultaneously, it's going to have a conversation with another 1,000 Ryans, at the same time, for various roles. And your digital twin will be having an interview with 1,000 recruiters at the same time. That is going to happen. When it's going to happen, my assumption is going to be probably within the next 18 months or so, but that is going to happen, So what we have to start creating, which your question is alluding to, is one of the most critical pieces of work that we have to do for the age of AI, and it is called the governance framework for AI. We have to work on governance frameworks for AI. What we allow people to do with AI, how we recognize if they are going beyond those boundaries and what are the consequences for doing that, how the company uses AI and what it uses it for, and how it communicates that it's using AI for this or whatever. That's a role. Once again, I'm going to circle back to something that I said a few minutes back, which is HR being the business leader of the future. This is a perfect example of one of the areas where HR can step in and help leaders and the organization design a governance framework that allows them to put the boundaries to these things that we know. Today is June the 30th. Oh, by the way, it's your birthday today, right?
No.
Oh,
Yeah, well, Friday the 13th is when I was born,
oh,
but
Friday the 13th.
I'm a January.
Oh, Friday
Yeah.
the 13th. But today's we talked about this in our preparation
Yes.
call. Today's Friday, June the 13th, when we're recording this, and today we are telling people that in a few months from now, the interviewee and the interviewer will be AI agents, and they will screen each other. And once they get to the top 2 or 3 people, that's when the human will step in. By the way, the same thing will happen with online dating platforms. Like, who wants to spend any more time scrolling through infinite amount of profiles when you can have an AI agent talking to your preferred AI agent person? And once the screen has been done, you get down to a couple of people that now you can have a conversation with. But that has gone through an entire screening process, which now is happening manually, but it will happen with AI. That is going to happen, and unfortunately, for those who don't like it, that is inevitable. And because it is inevitable, your best chance of success is to know or to learn how to get ready for that. And one of the areas to get ready for that is by providing or creating the right governance frameworks. For example, I'm going to imagine platforms like, I don't know the online dating platforms anymore, like, okay, Cupid and what is it, like Bumble and Tinder. I am going to imagine that at some point when you're creating a profile, you will have to select an option. Do you want to use an AI agent, or do you just want to use yourself? Do you want to match with people who have AI agents, or do you want to match directly with a human? And if I don't want to go through the whole annoying process of scrolling through I'm going to say AI agent, and after 3 interviews with this match, human connection. That's going to happen. That is going to happen. So let's get ready for that.
That's amazing. I think you're spot on. We're going to play this interview back every year, Enrique, and see how close we are to forecasting this. I think you're absolutely right. I'm already seeing signs of that happening right now. I mean, the fact that we can put a couple of prompts together and we can generate a whole video archive of the president of the United States having a conversation with former president that has already passed on, and it looks absolutely authentic and natural. It's only a matter of time when it becomes just absolute real-time chat around my values that I've instilled, or it's learned off of my prompts and engagement and conversation with it, that it becomes my digital blueprint of myself. And anyway, it's absolutely fascinating.
In Hacking HR, about 3 weeks ago, we released our first AI-powered on-demand certificate program, all of it created using video avatars. These are people that look like humans, but they are avatars, AI-generated avatars, and they look exactly like a human. Now, when you look at it and you pay attention and you see their mouth, you're like, it looks like an AI thing. When I ask people, like, how close to a human do you think this avatar looks like? And they say 50%. What I tell them is, yeah, but in 3 months, it's going to look 60%. And 3 months after that, it's going to look 60%, 70%, 80%, until you are unable to distinguish whether that person is an actual human or is an AI-generated avatar. So because we know that particular thing with video creation with AI is inevitable you have to create the governance frameworks to do this. And by the way, we're using a platform for this. There are many that you can use. I used that platform like about 6 or 7 months ago, and it didn't look at all the way it looks now. It looks so much better than it did 6 months ago, and it's going to look ridiculously better in 6 months from now. In 6 months later than today. We just have to tell people this is an AI-generated program. That's our governance framework. We are generating this content with an avatar. It doesn't have to be perfect, but if it's 85% perfect and it only costs us $100 a month versus having to create the same video with a studio and producers that cost us $100,000 a month, what do you think I'm going to choose? Perfection at $100,000 a month, or 90% perfection at $100 a month? It's no brainer, the decision that you would make in here, right? So that's where we are going.
It's absolutely fascinating. Enrique, I could talk to you for hours, and hopefully I can. And we get you to come back and we keep dialoguing on this and kind of doing some I told you so moments. And looking at what keeps transforming. But tell everyone how they can get in touch with you, follow you, and engage with you. You've got a tremendous LinkedIn presence. I'm absolutely thrilled for you on your success that you've found with the different ventures that you have going forward. But tell everyone just a little bit more about how they can get in touch with you and follow your journey.
Yeah, they can just go to LinkedIn and connect with me or send me a message. I'm always there, hanging out on LinkedIn to see what's happening and reading all this ridiculous amount of papers that are coming out now on AI, educating myself every day. That's where they can find me. They can just go to LinkedIn, follow me, and send me a message, and I am there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Enrique, for your time. Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for the invitation and for the conversation. Thank you.